Hello and welcome to the RM video channel. This video is available to members of Brixham Yacht Club and concerns protests or applications for redress, and it is really just to explain how the procedures work. The first thing to make sure of is that you comply with the racing rules of sailing requirements on the water for making a protest. These are shown in the racing rules of sailing under Rule 61. The primary requirement on the water is that someone on your boat must shout protest at the first reasonable opportunity, and that has been interpreted to mean as practically immediately. It's no good shouting "do your turns" or anything else before you shout protest. You must shout protest first. The next thing is, if your boat has a length overall of 6 meters or more, you have to display a red flag and keep it displayed until you have finished racing. This implies that you should have some means of enabling a quick release mechanism to display the flag. There are other possible alternatives to this procedure under Rule 61, so you really need to be very familiar with Rule 61. The next thing to do is to make sure that you are familiar with the protest procedure for Brixham Yacht Club. In 2021, the protest procedures are no longer shown in the sailing instructions. They just refer to this document, which is the Yacht and Dinghy Protest Procedures, which is available as a PDF download in the Yacht or Dinghy Racing Documents page on the website. This shows the procedures to follow to lodge a protest or an application for redress once you have complied with the requirements on the water. So the main item is in section 2, which is where it describes how you actually lodge the protest, and the preferred method is the BYC online protest form, which is available on the website. You can use a PDF form, which is also on the website, and when the clubhouse is opened you may be able to get forms from there as well. And it is as well to remember that you can also just use plain paper, provided you comply with Rule 61.2. So the procedures are about the same, except that if you use the online form, that will be sent on submission directly to protests@brixhamyachtclub.com. It will also provide a copy for you to save or print, and from then on that will be dealt with by the internal protest procedure of the club. If you fill in a paper form or a PDF form, then you will have to make sure it is photographed and scanned on the relevant WhatsApp group or emailed to protests@brixhamyachtclub.com. So this is the main document to now read to deal with protests, and that has just recently been changed in May. Another thing to remember is that it is not sufficient just to inform the race officer on the water. In fact, you don't need to do that at all, although it is a useful hint that something is possibly going to happen. But also do not rely on club officials, bar staff or other officials to do this procedure for you. You need to make sure that it happens. If you open the website and then go to afloat and click on afloat, you'll then find on the right hand side a list. But first of all, I want to emphasize that it is not necessary to make a protest or an application for redress on a form at all. You can do it on a plain piece of paper as long as you write all the required details, which are shown in Rule 61, and then you can use that as the protest form. But if you wish to do it on a proper form, the preferred method is to use the online BYC protest form. If you instead go to the yacht or dinghy racing documents and go to the download, which is this document here, and you only need page 1 because page 2 is for the protest committee, that protest form will need to be printed and then filled in with a pen or biro. So this protest form looks like this, and as I say, it has to be downloaded or printed, and it has to be filled in by hand. It cannot be filled in online. The online BYC protest form appears on the page. It takes a couple of seconds to come up, and this tells you what actually happens with it and gives you some data protection information as well, because don't forget that whatever you put on this form will be visible to everyone who has access to the WhatsApp group. Several of the fields have required answers and some of them have options. So just as with the printed form, you have a field for the event, which would be BYC Club Racing, and then the series, the date of the race, which can be filled in from a calendar, the race number, the type of action, and here you can choose from protest, protest and redress, redress only, or reopening. The type of hearing, you can apply for arbitration, which is again a preferred option unless you're applying for redress, a full hearing, an advisory, which is just a chat between the judge and the parties with no penalty implication. And then in here you put the class, which would be IRC or non-IRC, or even you could just put SWYTC, or you can put dinghy. Then you put your cell number and, if you wish, your boat name. In this box you put your name or whoever is going to represent your boat at the hearing. We then do need a contact number and also an email address, because at the present time parts of these hearings will be by email or by phone, and the hearing itself may be on Zoom, so we need an email address to enable us to deal with that. The other boat or boats, you need to put their sail numbers, boat names, or if it's an application for redress because of an error or omission by the race committee, then you need to just put RC in here. And again, if you know who's involved on those other boats, you could put their names in here. You then need to say whether or not you hailed the other party, so you can say yes or no to that. You then need to say whether or not you displayed a red flag, and that can be yes or no or not required. It would not be required if your boat LOA is less than 6 meters, and also if there is some other reason that is allowed under Rule 61. If you did inform the boat in another way, then you need to say so here. So that will be either yes or no. And if you put yes, then you need to explain when, where and how. Then, very important, you need to say when and where the incident took place. For example, the second upwind leg of the race, or second upwind leg of race 2, for example. And then you need to describe the incident. If you are going to bring any witnesses, you need to put the details in here. And then for further documentation about the race, for example the timing sheets or anything else that you need somebody else to produce, then you need to put the contact, for example who the race officer was or who else has got those details, preferably with an email address or a phone number. So that is there. And then you submit it. And when you submit it, there will be a copy for you to download or print, and also the form will be sent to protests@brixhamyachtclub.com. Now if you don't use this form at all and you don't use a printed form and just use a plain piece of paper, you can also send that to the same address, but it will be required to be posted on the WhatsApp group if you have access to that. If you wish to send a diagram, then you will need to send that separately to protests@brixhamyachtclub.com. Using the online form, you do not even have to wait to come ashore if you have Wi-Fi or data facility on your mobile phone. Just access the online form, complete it and submit it. So that covers the basics of how this procedure works. If you have any questions, please send them to protests@brixhamyachtclub.com and we will attempt to answer them for you. Thank you for watching.